Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Niche Cast. It's your boy, the Peptide Panther, Mr. South Auckland Doosra Deliverer, here with the Wobbly Wildcard for another beautiful episode of the Niche Cast, where we're going to drop a little bit of New Zealand Warriors hard and fast information, and then we're just going to roll through epic performances. That's the theme and trend and agenda of today, is epic Kiwi performances. Obviously, New Zealand Aotearoa has a fantastic long history of epic Kiwi sports performances. So we're just going to bring it a bit more recently to sum up some recent action. At the time of the recording this, Thursday morning, it's a niggly time for the Niggly Niche Cast because there's a lot of stuff happening as we speak. So it's just hard to touch on all those current events and series wrap-ups and all that stuff here and now. So we'll just do our best to weave in and out of Kiwi sports antics and shenanigans. Big up to all our Patreons. Thank you for supporting the Niche Cache. And there's a fresh Patreon episode of the warm-up korero from Monday morning that is there on the Patreon feed. Tomorrow is Friday. So there's going to be an email header coming out just for the people who subscribe on Substack to the Niche Cache email. So sign up to that if you want some extra content as well. And of course, we are always writing about Kiwi sports in service and honour of Aotearoa sports at theniche-cache.com. Wobbly Wildcard, do you have a shovel of mindfulness for our gardens?
That I certainly do. This quote is attributed to Buddha, so that's a nice start when these ones all the time. It goes, each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most.
Cowabunga.
Nice few beautiful ideas for the garden there in particular when it comes to rebirth and regrowth and things like that. It suits the metaphor nicely.
Regeneration, all that good shit. The quick little Warriors note here just to start us off, because I think this tells a lot about what the Warriors are doing, and perhaps there is something solid in here for Warriors fans to cling to. It's not irrational optimism, it's not irrational hope and irrational expectations, it's just solid numbers from their first 3 games. So in the NRL, the Warriors are second in offloads, meaning they have the second highest offload count after 3 games, and that is offset by the fact that the Warriors are 16th in errors, meaning they make the fewest errors in the NRL, which goes hand in hand with set completion. The Warriors have the highest set completion percentage in the NRL. So the Warriors are doing the most offloading, second most offloading, with the highest set completion, and they are first in post-contact meters. So first and foremost, they have the highest set completion in the NRL. They are making the fewest errors. And then from that, they're making the second highest offloads and have the most post-contact meters. Not only that, they are the only team in the NRL with over 2,000 post-contact meters from their first 3 games. So set completion gives you a chance in games. But this is what the Warriors are working with here, is that they've got the highest set completion and they've got the weapons as far as offloads and post-contact meters goes, which is very interesting, as is the Warriors being 13th in missed tackles, which means only 3 teams have fewer missed tackles than the New Zealand Warriors. So they're pretty good defensively, and they hold the ball while making the most post-contact meters and the second highest offloads, which, if that continues, the Warriors will be a very good NRL team. And another little interesting note here that I was pondering from that Raiders game is the balance of work between Cody Nikorima and Sean O'Sullivan, because there was a bit of a narrative after that Raiders game and just hearing people talk about the Warriors. Cody Nikorima is very efficient and effective in what he does. However, he is not playing as the dominant half. Sean O'Sullivan came in for his first Warriors game, and he had 56 touches to Nikorima's 43 touches. O'Sullivan had 8 kicks. Nikorima had 6 kicks. O'Sullivan had 14 runs. Nikorima had 10 runs. And if we go back throughout the first 2 games, round 1, Warriors defeat Titans. Cody Nikorima has 41 touches. Chanel Harris-Tavita has 35. So Nikorima got a bit more action there. Let's check the kicks. Cody Nikorima had a few more kicks. 13 kicks, 10 kicks to Chanel Harris-Tavita. Then we go to the Knights, and this is where there's a bit of a change. Nikorima has 49 touches. Chanel Harris-Tavita has 77 touches. So way more touches. Kicks. Nikorima has 15 kicks. Chanel Harris-Tavita has 11 kicks. So it's, most importantly, it tells me that there is an even split. Yes, one game, Nikorima might have more touches, but he also might have fewer kicks. Harris-Tavita might have more touches, but fewer kicks. It's all just balance, and you just want to share the workload around. And then O'Sullivan comes in, and he enjoys a lot more of the footy, while Nikorima is also very impactful with what he does. And I don't think necessarily this is a case of one type of half and another type of half. One number 7, who is the leading dominant half, and a number 6, who plays as second receiver, gets the footy and runs more, and as we ponder rugby league stereotypes. I'm interested in what the Warriors are doing here, because both of these halves that we currently have, and then you insert Chanel Harris-Tavita, he's pretty similar in that he can do a little bit of everything reasonably well. It's just that there's no, like, Cody Nikorima is just doing what needs to be done. He isn't going above and beyond and taking control of this team, which I think is a good position for him to be in. And the other half, Chanel Harris-Tavita or Sean O'Sullivan, is playing their role nicely, and it kind of just depends on the flow of the game. So the Warriors don't need to rely on one bloke to do one thing. They can call upon either to step up. You know, it might be Sean O'Sullivan pushing in support and then passing to Cody Nikorima, who hits the break, which is exactly what happened against the Raiders. So I'm just keeping an eye on that balance of workload between those two halves. And as it stands right now, I find it very hard to say that Cody Nikorima has been the best Warriors player. Like, even if he was, he's just doing a job, and yes, some of his moments might be more eye-catching, but he's allowed to chime in with moments of incredible efficiency, because the other half is doing a very solid NRL job. It's not as though Cody Nikorima is the elder statesman, and then there's a young half coming in who doesn't do much. That's not the case. Chanel Harris-Tavita and Sean O'Sullivan have both contributed to wins for the Warriors. And it's, when you factor in everything else, you know, first and post contact meters, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck being himself, and all these other little notes in that Warriors team, it's par for the course, because everyone's doing a job, everyone's chipping in, and everyone is playing to their strengths, which goes back to the coaches and designing a game plan at the strengths of the players.
Beautifully done. I mean, it's a lot of that, the team-wide trends that you mentioned there are good, like, high percentage following on from what they were doing last season, you know, not missing a lot of tackles, completing at a high percentage, the sort of things that are, like, I won't say expected of an NRL team, hoped for from an NRL team, because it's not the stuff that takes you above and beyond, it's the stuff that prevents you from making the kind of errors that then get punished by the other team in the form of points. Which is why I think the offload factor is the bit that caught my eye the most of all those, because offloads, it's like, when you're talking about efficiency in a game of rugby league, like a good offload, and not every offload's a good offload, sometimes you lose meters, sometimes fella catches a ball tackled straight away in the same area, it doesn't really make a difference. Other than the idea of showing that you could continue to throw offloads in the same way that, like, a big man in the NBA shooting a 3-pointer at least gets people's eyes to bulge a little bit and thinking, well, maybe I can't just leave him wide open if he's willing to take that shot, because what if he gets it? So like, but a really good offload, someone like to a guy running off through, or an offload that allows like the guy catching it to throw a pass and whatever, like that buys you a whole other tackle in your set. Like that's effectively a 7 tackle set right there. And more so if you can do that multiple times in the same set, and you can't always, because defenders know to wrap up the ball. It's been a factor in tackling for, a couple decades. But if you can do that, and the Warriors are doing that, like, that's free attack right there. Like, there's an extra tackle that's probably 10, 12 more meters to your progress in that set and whatnot. Like, that just seems like a smart way to go about playing rugby league in the year of 2021.
Especially when you've got some quick halves. Very nimble, spark, live wire type of halves. So again, playing to the strengths of the players. Now, wildcard. There was a certain performance that caught my eye in the White Ferns win over Australia. And the White Ferns are playing that third and final T20 International versus Australia this afternoon, Thursday afternoon. So be interesting to see what happens there. Yeah, Francis Mackay had a bit of a calf strain, and I mean, this just shows how bonkers the White Ferns are. The Francis Mackay was initially going to be dropped, and then Sophie Devine was ruled out, and so Francis Mackay was brought in to open. She should be opening all these games anyway. Like, I'm not sure what Hayley Jensen's doing opening the innings. Francis Mackay always opens for Canterbury. Hayley Jensen doesn't open for Otago. And then Francis Mackay suffers a calf injury, I think it is, calf strainish type of thing, after taking 2 wickets, leading wicket taker for the White Ferns in that game, one of 2 wicket takers for the White Ferns in that game. She hit 46 off 39 balls, couple boundaries, couple sixes, and basically set that win up for the White Ferns and put them in a strong position while visibly injured. And I thought that was a rather epic performance, especially when you absorb that wider context of Francis Mackay consistently being overlooked for the White Ferns, despite being one of the best domestic cricketers in Aotearoa, and maybe just straight up one of the best cricketers in Aotearoa. Any format, bat or ball, she's among the best performers, and she has been thrown around all over the show when she is selected by the White Ferns, and that was evident in the hours leading up to that game, as I just explained. And then she comes out and shows basically the White Ferns like how to win games against Australia. You just got to step up and find a way to perform, and I think it is a rather epic performance. So we'll roll through a few different examples. Do you have anything about the Francis Mackay performance, coming in visibly injured, dragging her team to success while not being like a fully fledged, established White Fern international? Is quite inspiring and quite entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched the entirety of that innings, and it was like a combination of thrilling, inspiring as well, entertaining for sure, just completely weird, baffling. It was a lot of emotions, because there wasn't a massive amount of support coming down the other end. Like, as you mentioned, Jensen has probably no business opening in the first place. It's like always rough on players, because it's hard to be critical on someone who's doing something that they hadn't specifically been preparing for. But yeah, we've mentioned many times the odd selections, and like Frankie Mackay was batting 8 in the sort of 7 or 8 in the first game, and wasn't even going to play the second game. I think the injury was a recurring thing. Like, I think that was a good reason of why she wasn't going to play, is because she was carrying the injury, and then she very obviously aggravated it during the game, because there were a couple of those like she was hitting it out towards the gap, and it was like 2 runs there, and then watching her like hobbling down the other end, probably not. Like that's one of the things where you get these. It's definitely a certain type of epic performance where like you balance the high achievements with the extra burden kind of thing, and when you see someone absolute like it's not often like this. It is often that players, professional sports people, all the time play through injuries, like little niggles, little issues here and there. You learn how to deal with them. Whatever you always see, well, not always, but you often see, for example, like I don't know, bowlers with a little bit of tape on their fingers, or various little strapping on the, rugby league players with the old strapping on the leg and stuff, all these kind of things. Like you often see those little aspects. You don't often see it in a way where someone is A, still like doing excellent things despite it, and B, like it's so obviously a hindrance. So that is that is most certainly epic. And I'll chuck out another one for you here with that Frankie Mackay performance. She is the 3rd player in women's 2020 international, I suppose, history to score 40 runs and take 2 wickets in the same game against Australia. You know, Australia are pretty much the benchmark in 2020 women's cricket. They're pretty comfortably the best team in the world right now. Only 2 other players have ever had a performance like that, and I'm guessing neither of them were injured at the time. They've both actually done it twice. That is Sophie Devine, who, as we said, she replaced her in that lineup effectively. And the other one is Nat Siver from England, who is, I think, regarded as the best all-rounder in the world. I think I'm remembering that one correctly from when England were just here not so long ago. So that's some esteemed company for someone who probably should have played a lot more games over the last couple years. She has had other injuries, but still, like, performances have always been there at domestic level. And to then be in that situation and to perform like that, yeah, epic is a very fitting word.
We'll stick to that theme. Like, that's definitely what we're talking about this episode, but I'm just having a couple downloads about what we are experiencing, because like I talked about the Warriors, and we've talked a lot about coaching, putting players in positions to succeed, playing to the strength of the individuals in your team and what your team can do really well. Mentioned it earlier in the week with like Tohu Harris, got good ball playing, has 2 try assists. Like there's things happening there where I can see that the Warriors are coached in a way to play to their strengths. The White Ferns, that doesn't happen. Players are put in positions that are either foreign to them or just like adverse to them. Like they're good cricketers, they can do anything, but it's a different mindset when you're selecting a player like Finn Allen. Let's take Finn Allen as an example with the Blackcaps. He's selected for the Blackcaps to do exactly what he did for Wellington. That's all he's there for. Just play the same way, in the same job. Many of these White Fern selections do not come close to that. Players are batting in this position for their domestic team, then they're batting in a different position for the White Ferns. This player is a great bowler, they don't bowl for the White Ferns. Like those type of situations, which may be connected, and this is how I talked about this maybe a few episodes ago, the abundance mindset with the Blackcaps, and I think having thought about it for a couple days, it's about like how many world-class players the Blackcaps have, and you can do that like definitively with stats. Like you just think about, Blackcaps test teams of years gone by, they had Stephen Fleming, Nathan Astle, all those type of dudes, but none of them really averaged over 40 across their careers. Now you can say the Blackcaps genuinely have world-class performers because there's a lot of test bowlers in that team who average around 25 in their careers, and there's a lot of batsmen who average over 40. So we're in a space where the Blackcaps, like any given team of 11, I'm kind of thinking that upper echelon test universe, a first 11 Blackcaps test team genuinely involves 8 world-class players. Compare that to the White Fern there are maybe 3 or 4. So then when you think about, okay, there's a new player for the White Ferns like Brooke Halliday, and because there's only a few world-class players, Brooke Halliday's got a bit of skill. She's showing a glimpse of what she can do, and she's the savior. She's been selected for every single game after making a 60 against England in an ODI. Since then, she hasn't scored over 20 in an international. She does have a couple not out, so I'm not saying Brooke Halliday is shit. I'm just saying the mindset behind it, when you're coming from fewer world-class players in your team, then when you get a player showing glimpses of being good, you rush that player in because we need them, because we've only got 3 world-class players and we need blah, blah, blah. Compared to the Blackcaps, you're dealing with like a full team of world-class players, and that's where you get into the mindset of, okay, we don't need to rush anyone into the team because the team this is a world-class cricket team. And I think those are, unfortunately, the White Ferns are they're in both example as the example of like what you don't want. And it's unfortunate for them, but I think there are some clear situations in New Zealand sport where this is evident.
Yeah, the bit that winds me up a little bit with the White Ferns is how you then, there's been criticism of Sophie Devine recently, and I think it's since come out that she missed that last game basically with just a backlog of exhaustion. She just wasn't physically fit, worn down, wasn't ready to go, which is not surprising given the amount of cricket, and not just the amount of cricket, but the amount of work she has to do. And she was the standout player in Super Smash. She's coming off a massive Big Bash series before that, and then she comes into captain the White Ferns, where she's kind of expected to do a little bit of everything, and then you get backlash against her saying things this is a weird little scenario. Maybe I'll explain it a little bit more in terms of sneakiness of it, because it was on Jeremy Coney and Brian Waddle's podcast. They had an ex-player on who said something about suggesting an out-of-the-box scenario of why don't we, here's one, why don't we take the captaincy of Sophie Devine to ease the pressure on her and then give it to Amelia Kerr? And it's well, that's bad on at least 2 different levels. For one thing, you're putting that pressure then on Amelia Kerr, who's even younger, less experienced. Does that make it better? And then also, this team's changed captains multiple times in the last 2 or 3 years. That hasn't really done the trick. So don't think that's really a productive idea. But then for some reason, you just keep hearing that repeated. And I think there's an interesting little undercurrent of this, because I heard Scotty Stevenson refer to it on a commentary as if it was a ridiculous idea, which actually it is a ridiculous idea. So I agree with him on that part, but he sort of suggested coming out in other parts of the media kind of line, something that sort of got my ears perking up. And then I remember seeing, because Brian Waddle and Jeremy Coney, their podcast is on News Talk ZB, or hosted by News Talk ZB, I guess, using News Talk ZB's resources, which is not the channel that hosts the cricket rights, but the one that used to have the cricket rights. So they've lost the cricket rights at the same time as Sky Sport lost the cricket rights, which isn't technically related. That's actually Spark and Sky have a little bit of a weird kind of, they're not so much rivals. There's a little bit of partnership stuff going on in a couple areas, which is interesting there as well. And it's also very interesting that I won't go into this detail, but just watching the way the commentary stuff has the commentators, the core commentators that they've used, the way that's sort of unfolded, it feels very much exactly the same as what was going on at Sky Sport. I don't really see anything innovative or fresh there, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because Sky were on a decent enough level by the end of things there, and I think they're doing all right. But there was a tweet that Brian Waddle sent out complaining about, or saying something about how nice it is to be able to wake up and watch this West Indies Sri Lanka series, I think it was, in the morning, just turn it on, it's on Sky, and then it was a very obvious jab at not having to worry about buffering or commentary that's all about patting themselves on the back and stuff like that. It's a very obvious shot at at Spark Sport. And so I think there's a little bit of that. I think that's a relevant undercurrent in some of that thing, but it's just annoying to then see that dragged out as like the general idea of the White Ferns rely on. It's normally 3 or 4. It's probably 2 or 3 at the moment because of Susie Bates' injury. But rely on a certain amount of star players, and then when they lose, let's blame the star players who have been the only reason this team has ever won games in the last couple of years to begin with. Like, it just seems very ungrateful and very short-sighted, and that kind of thing. Yeah, it does wind me up a little bit. But, well... If on the Blackcaps sense, I would say it doesn't matter whatsoever, because I think the Blackcaps know exactly who they are, what their identity is, what kind of like. We can probably disagree with some selections, particularly with squad selections. There's always a lot of debate because there is quite a strong domestic scene at the moment. Another thing you probably it's not that the women's domestic stuff isn't strong; it's that it's not maybe deep enough. Is more the issue, and there's a distance there between domestic cricket and international cricket, etc., etc. But with the White Ferns, I don't know that they have that identity stuff. So you do worry when some like unwarranted criticism emerges that they're then going to overreact to that. But I guess that's a see how those kind of matter.
The epic performance that comes to mind, and we're trying to keep this as recent as possible, but there's a big one from this summer, was Neil Wagner bowling at the Bay Oval, Mount Maunganui, playing cricket with just blatantly mangled toes and contributing to a winning performance. And I kind of feel that like that is the peak moment of Blackcaps cricket this summer, was that test in Tauranga, because I think that's when I remember a certain stage of the game, which I've talked about before, when Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor were under the pump from the Pakistani bowlers. Pakistan's a fun team. It was a good environment. I think that's when you had the Mitchell Santner run out, and then you had the Mitchell Santner match-winning catch, as well as Neil Wagner doing what he did with his mangled toes. Is that, like, just in this recent bubble of this summer, the summer of cricket for Blackcaps cricket, is that Neil Wagner moment the most epic performance from the Blackcaps this summer?
I'd have to think about it a little deeper, but yeah, I guess in terms of the sort of parameters of the word epic that we've been using, yeah, surely. Like, it's the most highest achieving compared to the most, like, the x-axis high achieving y-axis, the adversity he had to get through to do that, and then just, like, what that does to your teammates and spurring everyone on, and just the sheer determination. Like, that was definitely one of the most memorable performances for multiple summers, and it's Neil Wagner as well, so you almost didn't doubt it. Like, you just knew a couple broken bones in the foot, no dramas. You knew he was going to keep storming in, bowling, not necessarily as fast as he can, but as hard as he can is an important distinction, and chopping that ball in nice and short and roughing people up. And it's probably, I mean, it was not even probably, it's 100% a factor that got slept on because of the strong performances of the Blackcaps throughout the summer and the success that they've had. That Pakistan team was not bad. Like, the West Indians team didn't really turn up. This Bangladesh team has just let themselves down too often, particularly with bad fielding and drop catches and stuff. But that Pakistan team came here from the subcontinent, had to do the quarantine and all that. They performed to a pretty high level, and the Blackcaps just saw them off. Like, that was probably the I mean, the Aussie 2020 series as well is obviously, but that's a 2020 series. It's a bit of a different thing. Like, there were Test championship points on the line, and if we hadn't won that Test, I mean, the way it finished, we were on 70%, and Australia were on 69.2%. So I don't know how much they would have dropped off if they had drawn that Test instead of winning or whatever, but it's very likely that without that Neil Wagner performance, we might not have made the World Test Championship final as well. So that's another factor into the whole matter as well. That's another onion into the pot of soup or whatever. It's just Neil Wagner, man. You can't stop him. I'll tell you what else about Neil Wagner. He only picked up the 1 wicket in a shortened game on the Plunket Shield, but that was his 750th first class wicket. Obviously took a fair few back in South Africa. Has taken a whole heap. I think 219 of those were test wickets as well. Add in he hasn't played international cricket in any other format, but add in his List A stuff and his 2020 stuff, and he has 995 professional wickets to his name. And that means, a pretty significant milestone is on the horizon for him as well. So I don't know that the epicness is going to slow down for him anytime soon.
Do you have any examples from your little world of sport that come to mind when we're discussing this?
Yeah, there's two that sprung immediately to mind. I'll mention Charlisse Leger-Walker first, because I think her one is a nice situation that also adds in a lot of that adversity. It's not injury adversity, but it's there's certainly some of that as well, playing for Washington State University in the college basketball in her freshman season, so her first year in the college basketball scene. And she's also playing alongside her sister Crystal, who was in her last year, having transferred to the team. They made they only just did it because they were in, I think they won 12 games, lost 11 in their regular season plus conference tournament stuff. So that obviously they didn't win their conference tournaments, which is the Pac-12. So that wasn't enough to get them automatically through into the tournament, but only half the teams get through that way. And then there's a selection thing. Panel of experts decide the next best amount of the next best teams to fill out the brackets. And Washington State did sneak through in that one. It was sneak. They were right on the sort of barrier between in and out. Getting in, that was their first appearance in the tournament in 30 years. And looking at, the way they did it was relying enormously on a freshman guard from the Waikato. Charlisse Leger-Walker was third. This is for the Pac-12 conference, which, by the way, has two semi-finalists in the national tournament, Arizona and Stanford, both making the Final Four. So that's an indication of, they didn't win their conference, but also their conference was probably the toughest one in the entire country. So keep that in mind as well when I say Charlisse Leger-Walker was third in scoring, second in total points, 19th in rebound, 10th in field percentage, 8th in assists, 7th in free throw percentage, 3rd in steals, 5th in three-pointers made, 9th in assists to turnover ratio, 2nd in minutes played, and 2nd in 20-point games. That's pretty bonkers. Then add in that her sister as well, Crystal, was 2nd in assists, 1st in total assists, 8th in steals, where are we? 10th in three-pointers, 8th in assist turnover. A lot of these are the same categories as well that they both were excellent in. 3rd in minutes played, 10th in 20-point games, 10th equal in 20-point games. So that's automatically pretty amazing. I think where we get into epic status is when you actually get to the tournament, though, and you got Charlisse Leger-Walker really just running the show in front of the entire country in a massive game against South Florida. They lost, and there's where your adversity comes in. Also, the fact that Leger-Walker just wasn't. I mean, she scored 18 points. She shot 4 of 18, so it wasn't an efficient night. But she kept them in it by getting to the free throw line, where she was 8 of 8, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, continuing to find ways to play through the fact that the shots weren't dropping against a strong team who defended very well, who were obviously in a tournament game going to target the best player on the other team. And she's doing all of this as a freshman, which I think is just insane. She won the freshman, for the Pac-12 conference, she won freshman player of the week. Where are we? 7 times, I think it was. 7 times. There's only one player in the conference history who's won that more often. And she was, that's Christine Anigwe, who was the 9th overall pick in the 2019 WNBA draft. The other player to have had 7 of them is Kelsey Plum, who was the 1st overall pick in 2017. So all signs point towards Charlisse Leger-Walker not only making it to the WNBA one day, considering she's got 3 more years of college to repeat and improve on what she's just done, but she does that, she's likely to be a pretty high pick. And there's only ever been one New Zealander, Megan Compain, who's ever played in the WNBA. So there's these are incredible, epic numbers for Charlisse Leger-Walker, who was the conference freshman of the season as well. And I think I think there's a lot to say about the epicness of her tournament performance as well, because they did lose. She didn't shoot very well. It was a struggle, but she kept her team in the game with some pretty clutch plays, as did her sister. And then at the very end, like, she missed her last couple shots. There was a turnover for traveling. Like, there was some bad stuff in there as well. And that is all, fuel for the fire for moving forward. I think that's all part of the story. Like, that's the adversity as well. That's the kind of stuff you learn from, you overcome, you come back next season. Crystal won't be there next season because she'll have graduated, but pretty much the entire rest of the team will be. So there's no reason they shouldn't get back to the tournament for, the next couple of years again as well. So, in terms of epic performances, Charlisse Ledger-Walker is certainly one that I've paid a lot of attention to. I'm actually working on, I was just... The reason I was able to roll off all those numbers before is because I've got them all down in a document for an article I'm writing to highlight just how good her freshman season was. But yeah, I also think we need to, rather than shying away from the fact that she wasn't at her best in the tournament game that she played, I think that's actually maybe the most epic part of it in a funny way. Like, looking at the bigger picture and all that, and where you go from here and whatnot, I'd definitely given that one epic status.
We talked a whole lot about Sean Marks and Stephen Adams in the variety show. Sean Marks has worked his way through he's in a epic kind of situation, and he's front and center of it. So that is also rather epic. I'm gonna
Sean Marks could be executive of the year this year. Like, that's a legitimate possibility. Worked the hard and trade. He's got the big buyout deals with Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge. Like, he could actually be winning a major NBA award for what he's done.
It's a beautiful thing. Kiwi's just chiming in all over the world. I was thinking about, NRL players. If I do write a couple paragraphs about the Auckland Blues every Monday morning in our niche cache email. So if I was thinking Super Rugby, I've been super tapped into the Blues. Someone like Hoskins Satutu and just what he does week after week after week as a young player who is not quite at that certified All Blacks level, just how he contributes across the field, it's pretty epic in itself. From an NRL standpoint, and for this epic performance category, there needs to be a bit more context around the individual, as was the case with all of these examples we've rattled off. And in the NRL, I think what Benji Marshall is doing fits this mold. Obviously, he is Benji Marshall. In my mind, he's the greatest rugby league player from New Zealand to ever exist. And he's been on an almighty journey. And then as soon as he came back to the NRL, ironically after playing with the Blues, there was something that I saw that made me excited about Benji Marshall's twilight years, and that he was just able to contribute to winning performances. That's a theme of this episode, across a variety of different positions and roles. He helped out the Dragons, then he went up to the Broncos and had no ego, just did what he needed to do, went back to the Tigers, and that was beautiful in itself. And now he's with the Rabbitohs, and his wizardry and excellence is evident in how he contributes to the team coming off the bench. So he's not a starting half, and he didn't have to do too much last week as the Rabbitohs were cruising, but in the 2 games before that, against Melbourne Storm, he played as a middle forward as the Rabbitohs were chasing points. So he played as a middle forward, but he defended out on an edge in an edge forward position, and then he'd get in at first receiver. And it was a completely, that is maybe a whole new position that just got invented right then for Benji Marshall. So I'm not surprised that it was Benji Marshall who had this new position invented for him. Then he played in the halves for the Rabbitohs. Adam Reynolds went off, and he was fantastic. And I'm if he somehow can keep this up after already jacking up some epic performances, given who he is, what he's done, where he's at, I think this year might be a fairy tale. There's World Cup at the end of the year. Benji Marshall's one of the key dudes who won a World Cup for the Kiwis against Australia. That was epic. And if he's doing what he's doing now, playing at a very high level, most importantly, contributing to a team when he is not the first choice half, because he might not be the first choice half for the Kiwis. Ooh, it's like, I'm just getting a bit excited there, Wildcard. But that's forecasting forward. So I'll come back to the present moment. I'll take a deep breath, get a bit of mindfulness in me. What Benji Marshall's doing right now is certified epic.
Absolutely. And I know we're keeping it in the present moment and whatnot, but also instead of not just looking forward, but also if you were to look backwards, and it's always very difficult to compare between eras and all these kind of things, but in terms of the legacy that the guy has, the peak of his career as well, and like some of the moments that he's achieved, and like what he did for the art forms of the behind the back flick pass and the goose step, the fact that he overcame like the shoulder reconstructions and whatnot, and there was a point in his like early mid-20s where it was like maybe this guy's just never going to be able to have a long career and he might not come back and whatnot. And not only does he come back, but he's playing at an age where most players have long since hung up the boots and still finding ways not only to do incredible things, but to reinvent himself in a way along the path that he's been walking. And I mean, consider all those things together, and he's the greatest Kiwi not NRL, the greatest Kiwi rugby league player of all time, isn't he? Like, I don't even think someone like Stacey Jones obviously is high on the rankings as a few of the old boys as well before that, but like, I struggle to consider a case other than Benji Marshall's at this point.
Yeah, and it's kind of predicated on what he's done in this latter stage of his career, and it's the type of thing where it's like, well, we're talking in this way on the 1st of April. So to me, it's similar to Ross Taylor in the sense that like Ross Taylor has already had a pretty epic quote unquote twilight period of his career, and he's still playing, and he still wants to play, and he still wants to contribute to an international cricket team. So it's kind of like, well, there might be something extra. Like there's these dudes are at where they're at now, and it's epic. There might be something extra, which is even more epic. Do you have any other athletes from New Zealand, sports folk, teams, individuals, whatever it is? Do you have any more epic performances from the New Zealand sports beat that come to mind?
Yeah, well, since New Zealand football have ratified me as one of the top 4 premiership experts in the country, weird thing to think about, but it would be rude of me not to consider someone from the just finished premiership season, and I thought about doing the whole Team Wellington team, like just the way they finished things off and whatnot was beautiful, but then I thought there is a guy who sums up this entire experience all by himself, and that's Hamish Watson. And Hamish Watson, I thought, got a lot of unfair criticism when he was at the Phoenix, and he wasn't quite good enough, and that's fair to say, and things were a little bit, like, rough, therefore. Sort of came back and did his thing for Team Wellington for a while, and he's had a couple of very good seasons at NPL level in Australia as well, but I've never seen him play better than he did this last premiership season. I've never seen him at this level. And I don't even think it's necessarily a physical thing with him either. I mean, he's always been big and able to move about. And I think it's a mental thing. Like, it just seems to me like he's so much more comfortable in his own skin, and he understands his game to a point he maybe didn't before. And he doesn't feel like he's got as much to prove, and he's therefore able to go out there and enjoy himself. And he's just a bully, and it's so much fun to watch. Like, he's just shoving guys over. He's been a massive pest. He doesn't care. He's winding people up. It's just been like an absolute joy to watch him go about, and the whole way through as well. He's been scoring copious goals. He's a Golden Boot winner from the last season. He's scoring like simple tap-ins and he's scoring chips from almost halfway. He's got the full variety. And where things get especially epic for him, I reckon, is where you get to the playoffs that just happened. He scored a hat-trick against Hamilton Wanderers in the semi-final. Absolutely brilliant. Got them started with a fantastic free kick and then just never let up from there. He was, incredible. It was just a summation of everything he'd been doing up until that point. And then I thought even in the final, where he didn't score against Auckland City, other people maybe got the spotlight there. I thought he was brilliant in that game. And the way he played and the way he muscled up against Brian Caltech, against Adam Mitchell, to the premier centre-back combo in the league all season, against the team who were minor premiers and whatnot, the way he played in that game was essential to the fact that Team Wellington were able to win. He might not have got the credit for it, but he's doing all the hard yards in a very, dare I say it, very Chris Wood kind of way. This is what people say about Chris Wood. You watch him play, where you actually focus on him. Sometimes the striker will get critics, based on the fact that they don't score goals. And Burnley don't score a lot of goals anyway, so it's easy to look at Chris Wood in a game they might lose 1-0 or something and be or maybe a game they draw 0-0 and he had one big chance and he didn't score it. And it's easy to criticize someone like that for saying, well, why didn't you score that goal? And it's a lot harder to focus entirely on all the work that guy does off the ball and selectively pressuring the defense and the amount of times he's got to go up for a high ball and trying to flick these things on, holding the ball, all these really difficult tasks that get left on a striker like that. And Hamish Watson at a much lower level, obviously, but in the Premiership's version of that, comparatively speaking, that's what he does. And I thought that was, as I say, essential to the fact that Team Wellington were able to win that final. And if this was his best ever season as a footballer, he was absolutely fantastic the entire way through. Again, joyful to watch and dare I say it, epic from the man. Big fella Watto is. There's no more fun player to watch. That's the difference here. Is it's not just about the achievements and whatnot. And he maybe doesn't have the same amount of stuff to overcome. Maybe I don't think he has the adversity in this case as some of the others that we've mentioned. He's not battling against age. He's not battling against injury. He's not even battling at a new level or anything like that. He's played at a higher level than this, but I don't know, something I think maybe he's probably had to overcome a lot of criticism and stuff like that in the past, and he has done that, and he's just in a state mentally where he's loving his football, and that makes it so enjoyable, therefore, to watch, and damn, he's so good at it too.
Are there any other footballers, Flying Kiwis type of footballers who fit this category? What they're doing now is just, you mentioned Nick Zanev in the variety show. Is there just a Flying Kiwis footballer who is just doing epic shit in an epic scenario?
Yeah, well, Nick Zanev's last-minute penalty save and whatnot, but yeah, we talked about that in the variety show, so I don't need to repeat that one. People can go listen back to that one. It was very good show, so if I don't say so myself. Winston Reid's been mentioned a few times as well. I don't know that he's got specifically an epic performance or whatnot. It's just more considering he missed basically 2 years of football with injuries and coming back to the level that he has is pretty impressive. Maybe a shade below epic at this point, but if he leads Brentford to promotion, that's when you'll start to see him getting into this kind of consideration. There's a couple names to mention in the W League, maybe. Claudia Bunge has played every single minute for Melbourne Victory, who I haven't actually, we're recording this in the morning, I haven't actually checked how that game finished up, because I was trying to watch it. It was the last game of the season, and it was Sydney FC against Melbourne Victory. The winner would get the minor premiers plate finished first, and just the second half was, this is absolutely a criticism and a blame of Fox Sports and their football coverage in Australia. The second half was unwatchable with glitches and whatnot. It was embarrassing that the way they cover their National Women's League was as bad as that, considering this has been a problem that's been recurring all the way through the season. Even some of the A-League games have had shockers. You look at that first Phoenix game of the season where they missed a goal. The same thing happened in this what do you call it? The W League game last night, where I think the point at which I gave up was after Princess Sabini had a penalty which froze just before she kicked the ball, and then it cuts back to her celebrating having already scored it. I'm like, I can't stay up till 11:30 at night when it's not even like viewable. But yeah, Claudia Bunge has played every single minute for that team so far this season, and they lost 2-1, so they finished third. I think Olivia Chance as well, working her way in, having joined the team late from a short stint with Sheffield United before she got to Brisbane. She's been excellent for Brisbane as well. Annalie Longo had an injury in the middle of things, otherwise she would have been close in for Melbourne Victory. You had, I think, Lily Oldfeld and Liz Anton, I think, played every single minute for Perth, who didn't win a game and came last with only one draw, so it wasn't so great for them. But Malia Steinmetz played every game, often subbed off with 20-30 minutes to go. There was one game I think she started on the bench as well. So there's a few. Again, I don't know that anyone's quite in the epic state, but the semi-finals are coming up on the weekend. I think it's either Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, something like that. That's probably where we get to the epic status, and this is sort of why we went on a wider lens focus podcast in the first place, is because just the timing of today is kind of like in between all the cool stuff happening. But yeah, the W League finals coming up. I should look that up actually to see if they've confirmed them. No, not on Google anyway, but it will be Brisbane and Olivia Chance against Melbourne Victory, who have Annalie Longo and Claudia Bunge, and then Sydney will be playing Canberra, who have Paige Satchel, who's a little bit in and out of Canberra's team, but she has started their last sort of 2 or 3 games in a row at a time when they were playing for their playoff hopes. So, getting back in the team at the point where it matters the most. And Bunge and Satchel, Oldfeld, Steinmetz, and Anton as well. So all 5 of them, this is their first time playing at this kind of... Paige Satchel did have a brief spell in Germany where she didn't play a lot, but she was with a professional team. But other than that, this is the first time any of those players have played professionally above the level of the New Zealand domestic league. So that's also pretty... again, not quite epic status, but it's closing in on epic status.
There's something epic in what Canterbury Cricket have been doing, and that is largely due to Will Williams, the big homie, Will Williams, leading wicket taker in the Plunket Shield, 28 wickets, and he's also the leading wicket taker in the Ford Trophy. So that's pretty epic. To be the leading wicket taker in both non-T20 formats is rather impressive, especially when Will Williams doesn't appear to have anything super unique about him other than bit of in-swing. Very tight bowling as well, because he's got an RPO on the Plunket Shield of 1.91, which is absolutely ridiculous. More epic than Will Williams the individual is the trio of Canterbury seamers, headlined by Will Williams, first class bowling average of 23, Fraser Sheet, first class average of 21, Sean Davey, first class average of 18. So Canterbury have 3 right arm seamers who have first class career averages below 25. Definitely also below 23.5. That's pretty epic. So shout out to those Canterbury seamers.
There's almost another one you can mention there as well, who links on nicely to that, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we should do something next week about wrapping up the summer of cricket for the Blackcaps and whatnot, and White Ferns as well, where it was probably the biggest off-season move. You don't get a lot of big dramatic moves and transfers, whatnot, in domestic cricket, but the biggest one was Daryl Mitchell moving from Northern Districts to Canterbury, and it felt like such a nice fit. He was going to obviously take over the retiring Andy Ellis's role and being that kind of just being that all-rounder, that guy who'll come in and middle order and score your reliable runs, guy who won't be like opening the bowling or anything, but is going to take wickets as your second, third change kind of thing. And he hasn't played a huge amount for Canterbury because he's played quite a lot for the Blackcaps. And it was something I was thinking about the other day watching him go, is like, because I was looking at his average, and his average isn't fantastic, and either batting or bowling in 2020 international cricket, and that's because he played quite a bit before this summer. Like, he had played a lot of 2020s, he hadn't played ODIs, he hadn't played tests. Well, he had played that one test, hadn't he, against England was that last season, or would have been the start of last season, eh? And he scored not 100, he scored a 70 odd on debut. So he had played a little bit of international cricket before that, and he'd done some nice things, and probably that first test was obviously a milestone moment for him, but maybe a little like barrier broken or something, I don't know, because what he's done this summer, like, I was just thinking about this watching him play, like, he's a different cricketer than he was when he first played 2020 stuff for the Blackcaps. Like, I don't know what it is, but he's just gone to a different level, and he's definitely one of the heroes of the summer, and he's gotten as well to a point where he's, again, like a lot of these sort of epic performers that we're mentioning, so enjoyable to watch. Like, he wasn't necessarily like that when he first played for the Blackcaps. He definitely is now. He knows his shots. He knows where, and man, the way he lofts a straight drive for six is beautiful to watch. And he's definitely an underused bowler. I'd like to see him used a lot more, actually. And with the ball in international cricket, I think that's one aspect where maybe he has a reason to be a little bit annoyed about those things. But he's had a huge summer. He's, century in a test match, century in a ODI as well. Brilliant century in that ODI. It rode his luck a little bit, but so it goes. That's how you got to do it. Like, Daryl Mitchell as well, maybe, I don't know if he's epic status, and even for the Blackcaps, like, if we were going to pick a Blackcaps player, it's Devon Conway. Like, he's even overshadowed there a little bit, but since we're talking about Canterbury cricket a little bit, Daryl Mitchell's move to Canterbury has definitely unlocked just a new tier to his potential. Well, it's not even potential, is it? It's like he's delivering on that.
It is the manifested. This is a perfect, thank you for chucking up Daryl Mitchell wildcard, because it's the perfect place to wrap this podcast up. Because there is a wave of very talented New Zealand cricketers within this Blackcaps group, as I said at the start of the show, just the amount of world-class players. It's fantastic, beautiful, rare in our lifetimes. I was actually thinking, who was the test all-rounder before Colin de Grandhomme?
For a while there, I don't think there was one, but Jimmy Neesham had a stint in the team, probably the most recent one before that.
Right, because now you've got like 3 or 4 of them, so it's pretty cool. Daryl Mitchell, and this is, again, it's perfect because it's an idea I've been thinking a wee bit about. He's played 14 T20 internationals, and 11 of them have been in New Zealand. 3 of them have been in Sri Lanka. ODIs. 3 ODIs, all of them in New Zealand. Tests. 4 tests. All of them in New Zealand. And I've hinted at this steadily over the last few weeks, and I'm just fascinated to see what happens next with this group that we currently have, and I think that will be a key focus of next week's Blackcaps summer wrap-up, is this idea that we have a lot of these very talented cricketers who are bolstering the Blackcaps and boosting up the Blackcaps stock. A lot of these dudes have played minimal cricket overseas, if they have played overseas, because some of them might have a sporadic. Like, who knew Daryl Mitchell played 3 2020s in Sri Lanka? No one can pull that out of their hat as a note with regards to Daryl Mitchell. And I think there's a couple of lads who have like snuck in, like Glenn Phillips snuck in for a test in Australia. Someone snuck in for an ODI over in UAE, which has also happened. But there's a lot of these dudes who are doing great things in New Zealand, And I am fascinated to see who, not like whether these players can perform outside New Zealand, it's about who steps up and performs outside New Zealand. And I think Daryl Mitchell is one of the most intriguing, because he is almost on that Devon Conway level. Like, what he has contributed to the Blackcaps early in his career is pretty outstanding. And now it's about embarking on this next phase of our Blackcaps cricket, where we do have a bit more overseas cricket, and we can actually start to see who are pure international cricketers and who are the blokes who are very good domestic cricketers. They're informed domestically in Aotearoa, and then they play an international in Aotearoa, and it's not all that different from what they do domestically, and it's all good. Because the challenge isn't that much higher, the adversity isn't that much higher to what they face in domestic cricket, and they are confident in who they are and what they do. All of that changes when you go overseas. So, fascinated by that.
Can I chuck in war as well? And that is Mr. Adam Fraser-Milne, who, just watching him make his little 2020 comeback in the second game against Bangladesh, he got a couple wickets. I think he bowled very tidily. A lot of those sort of Adam Milne deliveries, just outside off stump, skidding through at pace where the guy, backs away, can't get the bat on it kind of thing. Nice dot ball kind of thing. He was doing nicely in the Big Bash. And he's an interesting cricketer because I think, I'll admit, it's not that I wrote him off. It's that he had so many injuries over such a period of time that I was like, I'm not even going to consider, I'm not going to do another Corey Anderson with this guy. I'm just not going to consider him on the scene until he's ready to make a, sustained comeback kind of thing. Seems like after a very good Big Bash and getting back in the Blackcaps T20 team like he has, seems like probably now is the case. So, considering that, first of all, epic status for him, because back in 2011, he was actually part of the Wairarapa squad that won the Chatham Cup. So he's a Chatham Cup winning footballer. This was after he'd made his I think he was about 19 then. He made his Blackcaps debut at age 18. The reason he's so intriguing because A, he has international experience from 2020 stuff, so I don't think that's something to worry about from his perspective. B, this is a stacked bowling lineup in 2020 games, but maybe he does offer something that others don't, which is very interesting, because it's already hard to find a place for, say, Lockie Ferguson's in there, Santner and Sodhi are in there. Those are your three guarantees. Probably Tim Southey, probably Trent Boult. That's likely your 5 bowling options in a 2020 World Cup scenario. You might drop a Boult or a Southey in India for the World Cup there, because if you wanted to get an extra spinning option in there, but you probably wouldn't have to because you could just pick Chapman or Phillips. Phillips will be in there anyway. Chapman could come in as an extra spinner. But that already means you can't fit Kyle Jamieson, let alone Hamish Bennett or someone like Adam Milne. But Adam Milne is interesting because he's coming back on the scene now, and it feels different with him because he played for the Blackcaps basically 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. He does feel like a little bit of a recycled player from that point. But I'll just point, just to keep that in perspective, though, I'll point out Adam Milne is 28 years old, born in April 1992. Devon Conway, star of the summer, just coming on the scene, born in July 91, he's 29. Daryl Mitchell, the other guy we were just talking about, born in May 91, he's 29. Adam Milne is younger than those two guys who are both just come on with their breakout international seasons. It's just an interesting one to keep in mind when you consider where these guys are at. He's actually at the age that most guys are coming through and either debuting for the Blackcaps or having their breakout season for the Blackcaps. Just an interesting little thought experiment there with Adam Fraser-Milne, Chatham Cup winning footballer. He came off the bench, played 40 minutes, I think, as a left winger. I think that's right.
Shout out to Adam Neymar Milne.
That's the one.
Nifty, very nifty athlete and sportsman. We'll wrap it up there, Wildcat. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Niche Cache. Kia kaha, stay beautiful, and the chur.